Welcome back. Several weeks ago, President Joe Biden announced a pause to student loan debt until May 2022. While it's a relief for many, co founder of Roots Action, Jeff Cohen, joins me to discuss if this move is truly enough for many struggling with student loan debt. Jeff, thank you for joining me.
Great to be with you.
So, the issue of student debt has been a long time concern for many individuals. What was your initial reaction to Joe Biden extending the student loan payments?
I was very happy. I mean, there's so many people, and they're not all young people. They're grappling with student debt decades later. So many people were freaked out. So the extension of the payment from February 1 to May 1, it's a good thing, but it's just too small. What we need is the president to use his authority that Senator Chuck Schumer keeps encouraging him to use his authority to cancel up to $50,000 per person that has that much debt. And it's an issue that if Biden could be persuaded to use his executive authority, it could make the lives of so many people better. And the most important thing from a public policy perspective, it's a way to stimulate the economy from the ground up. It's a real economic benefit for society as a whole, not just the 43 or so million people that are now grappling with student debt.
So, do you think the additional 3 months is actually helpful?
Yeah, the 3 months is very helpful because during COVID, people are really suffering. But it's just not a long term problem. And we have a long term problem to solve. And President Biden could solve it. I'm old enough, I went to a public university in 1969, and tuition was almost free. The average tuition for a semester when I went to college was about $300, $400 a semester. And now, at all these public colleges and universities, the tuition has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, even if you allow for inflation. So, if the price of cars and housing and food has gone, from here to here, the price of college tuition, even at public universities, has gone up to here. And it's not the case in other countries. In Europe, higher education is still cheap or free. And it should be in our country. We are a wealthy country. You should not be punished for going to a public a college or university. It should be encouraged. I mean, people have more college loan debt than they have credit card debt or auto loan debt. So it's really a serious problem, and President Biden could solve it.
Now, I'm really happy that you brought that up because, according to your website and some of the research that I found, student loans are a $1.7 trillion industry. I just want to know, how did this issue become such a huge problem for our country? You kind of touched on it a little bit,
Yeah,
but why is it continuing to grow?
yeah, it's a problem because we have disinvested in education, and um, you know, in uh, in my era, working class people, middle class people could go to college, and it didn't put the whole family into debt, which is what's happening now. So, besides it being a societal wide problem, and remember, half of the people with student debt, they went to public colleges. About a quarter went to these for profit private colleges that you see on advertised on television. Some of them are pretty unscrupulous. But the if you took the right solution, which is to forgive this debt, which shouldn't be there in the first place. I didn't have this debt in 1969 and 1972. It would stimulate the economy from the ground up. People would be able to start businesses. People would be able to work in their profession in the way that they want. Um, people would be able to buy homes. It's truly an economic stimulus, and it doesn't look like there's much happening with Build Back Better in Washington. This is something President Biden could do himself.
Now, I'm really happy that you mentioned that because I'm sure he is feeling the pressure. A lot of people have been talking about it. And I think only more and more people are starting to understand this issue. But can you explain how he actually does, or how he actually has the authority to kind of
Yeah,
cancel the student debt?
yeah. Senator Schumer, Senator Warren, they're arguing that under the Higher Education Act of 1965, which put which was Congress saying that authority over student debt and how high and what interest, it would go to the executive branch. So it's now within the purview of the Department of Education. How do we know this? Trump did a very tiny change, citing at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, where he eliminated the interest. He waived the interest rates on repayment. So Biden has his Justice Department now looking at whether he's got the authority. If Trump had the authority, why doesn't Biden have the authority? I mean, what's wonderful is that there's so many members of Congress that are saying, President, do it. Help the economy grow, help racial justice, help economic justice. I mean, I saw Jamal Bowman has been great on this issue. AOC has been great on this issue. And she made the point, she used the word delusional, that Democratic Party leaders are delusional if they think they're going to stay in power without addressing this serious issue of student debt. Cori Bush was a Congresswoman first term from St. Louis. She was a Black Lives Matter activist a couple years ago. And she tweeted on Christmas Day, all I want for Christmas is for Biden to cancel student debt. So you've got, Schumer, Warren, Bernie Sanders in the Senate. You've got all sorts of Congress members, including Congress members from the Bronx. It's really, this is the time to do something dramatic to help the working class and especially people of color.
So I kind of want to know, like, all these people are saying, like, let's cancel this student debt. Do you have any idea why, they may be withholding from canceling student debt? Do you have any like suspicions or any ideas on why they just won't cancel it?
Biden is not a progressive like some of these others I've mentioned. And Biden has never been great about shaking up the status quo in a working class direction. Um, he's when he's pressed on student debt publicly, like at a CNN town meeting a few months ago, he goes off on a tangent. Like I remember Ronald Reagan, when he'd be asked about government support for the poor, he would argue against it. Well, no, you heard about that woman in Chicago that's driving the Cadillac and receives welfare. It was sort of a non sequitur. It was stupid. Well, what Biden does is he talks about I don't want to give billions of dollars in student debt relief to people that have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn. He brings up the Ivy League. Ivy League students or graduates are carrying a fraction of 1% of the total debt. It's people of color, Black students, Black people, Black graduates are carrying disproportionate amounts of student debt. Black students more than white students, and people of color students more than white students take out student debt. They take more student loans, and they take longer to pay off the student loans. And, we have a racial wealth gap in this country, and college was supposed to reduce the racial wealth gap. But actually, people have gone to college. You compare white households, college educated households, to Black college educated households, and the racial wealth gap is greater among graduates. And the main reason its racial wealth gap is greater is student loan debt. So, I mean, let's face it, Biden would not be in the White House. It was a close election, if not for young voters, Black voters, people of color, progressive activists. He could really do for the working class as a whole, of all colors, uh, this cancellation of student debt.
How can we well, I really appreciate you, like, telling us about it. I wish we could really, like, go on and on about it so much more because there's so much information regarding this topic, but how can people stay up to date with your organization and just to learn more about this issue?
Well, we're going to be focusing on this issue, rootsaction.org. People can find us. We also have a website called progressivehub.net. We will be working with a lot of groups. I encourage people to look at the Debt Collective, which is another group that's working on this. They're a group that came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement 10 years ago, the Debt Collective. But you will be hearing from Roots Action in the coming weeks and a lot of allies. We are going to get louder at the end of January, and then February, we're going to be really loud. President Biden, do something, really make the country move forward in a way that Joe Manchin can't stop you. Republican leader McConnell can't stop you. You've got the executive authority, use it.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.